Sunday today, and we will have the practitioners come up and sit, and we will talk about faith and belief and maybe other things.
No questions from the audience?
Well, I think we have a lot of questions. Yeah, go ahead.
So, to start, I thought it would be nice for us to, give a synopsis, a quick summary of how we came to religious science. What was your first introduction to these teachings? Something like that, just briefly.
Okay, I was in a beauty shop getting my hair braided or helping someone get their hair braided. And at the time, my only experience was with a Pentecostal church in the later part of my teenage upbringing. So I was like really getting tired. It was kind of like a drag for me. So I was in there, I said, God, there gotta be some kind of church that's got all of the soulful music, but none of the guilt. And someone said, well, you need to go to Agape. I'm like, all right. So I walk into Agape and I see just freedom. So many different people, so many walks of life, all together joined in celebrating life. And it was intoxicating, and they were filled with love, and I got a prayer from a practitioner, and it was just over then. It was just like, I'm in, I was hooked. And it got me through many a bad time, good time, and just the teachings have held me steady through many a tossing sea.
Well, my connection with Science of Mind goes way back to when the Earth was still cooling. Like 1973. I was much younger then. I was living in Denver, Colorado, and I was just completing my years in college. And through a friend, I was introduced to another person who was very involved with the Mile High Church of Religious Science, which is probably still to this day, if not the largest, the second largest religious science church in the country. And I was on the earliest days of my journey back then, and I was doing a lot of things on my own, having not yet even known about Science of Mind, that were very similar. Part of my background in college was in religious studies, and I was also very scientific, so I had a lot of science background. And I was always going back and forth between the two, trying to combine them and so forth. And someone had shared with me about Science of Mind, and I realized that I didn't need to reinvent the wheel, that it had already been invented by somebody else. So I was introduced to Science of Mind and Ernest Holmes way back then. And of course, over the years have not only continued with it, but have been introduced to many teachings that are very harmonious with Science of Mind. So that's how I became acquainted with it. So thank you.
So I think I was introduced to Science of Mind before I knew about Science of Mind in the form of 4 little books that I could afford because they were very cheap at the time. And it was called Life is a Game and How to Play by Florence Scovel-Sheen. And that was my first introduction to the principle of religious science. My second and more official introduction to this teaching was I was looking for a group of Course in Miracles, and there was a little church in North Hollywood that where people would gather once a week. And that was a Church of Religious Science, and that's how I have been introduced to its principle. I've been there for over maybe 25 years or so, and I started taking classes, and I became a practitioner in science of mind.
I, like Douglas, was introduced to Science of Mind through a friend. I was raised United Methodist, and at a period in my life I didn't know what I wanted, and I asked the universe what my life was about. And after going through a bunch of changes, and then asking this question, I got this answer, and my life changed completely. And I was going on about my business. That happened in '76, and was going on about my business evolving, with spirit. And somebody asked me at one point, "Have you ever heard of religious science?" And I said, "No." I said, and the person said, "You need to check it out. It's you." And I said, "Okay." And so I checked it out, and after a while I recognized it through the teachings and through the classes that it really lined up with what I believed. And so that's where I came to it.
I came to it through a friend. She was moving and had some books that belonged to, at the time, was Turnpike Church of Religious Science. And I offered to return them. So I brought them over here, but I did keep one of them for a while. It was a Catherine Ponder book, and I took it with me on an excursion. And on the return trip, in a semi with two guys, the driver, Hal, and this other guy who just was giving me grief the whole way. And I read in this book this little chapter on how to deal with difficult people. It had a phrase in it: "There is no such personality in the universe, there is only God." So at a stop that we made, they went in and I stayed in the truck. I said this over and over for about 30 minutes. And when they came out, he did not bother me for the rest of the trip. And I went, "Oh my, I want more of this magic. I want more of these miracles." So I did bring the book back. And I started coming to service. I started taking classes, and when I got, as I said earlier, God wants me to be happy, I was like, oh yeah, okay. So, next we're going to go to some questions about faith and belief, the power of belief. And the first one is, how have you developed your faith? EJ, you want to start?
Sure. Well, first of all, recognizing through some, like I was saying earlier, through some difficult experiences, I'll just tell a quick story. I was playing music, working my way through college, and I came home one night, tired, 3:30 in the morning, and got out of my car, walked halfway across the street, and something in the universe said to me, somebody's gonna steal that stuff tonight.
Wow.
It was like there was reverb, it was just like, it was very distinct, very clear. And I looked at my car, and I looked at the stairs, and I looked at my body, and I said, nah. And I went upstairs, and the next morning the stuff was gone.
Oh.
And it told me there, all of a sudden, that there was something more to life than meets the eye. And 2 years went by, I had to get a job. A friend of mine was working at a bank, and he said, we need a real estate appraiser. So I started appraising real estate. I did it for 2 years and recognized I really can't do this the rest of my life. I was thinking, man, maybe a good, stable job, and then I could do my music on the side, but it didn't really work out that way. And then I asked the universe this question, what is my life? And I got this answer. Everything is connected, everything is energy. We are all one. In a nutshell, it actually took about 2 hours, this download that happened. And I wound up out in my backyard, walking around in circles, looking at the sky, recognizing there's a similarity between gravity and charge. The thing that keeps the Earth around the sun, and the thing that keeps the electrons around the nucleus of it. And it went on and on. And it was all energy, and that was just amazing to me. And then from that point on, I recognized that everything is connected, and the one divine power has its own best interest in mind. And I'm part of that. And it's in me. And so God has my best interest in mind. And that created a big wave of relief for me. And that's where my faith is built.
Wow.
It's belief.
Wow. That is awesome.
It felt awesome.
I bet. I think we're done now. Yeah, we can follow that. There's another meditation.
It's not as much fun. The first time that I had an incline to what faith is, I didn't have even a language for it. I was in mid-20s, and I had an experience where I could hear the Holy Spirit, but I did not know that was either the Holy Spirit. I really didn't have a language, even though I was raised a Catholic and was in a convent for a little while. But anyway, so after my first experience with the Holy Spirit, I realized that I needed to pray again. So I started praying, and all I knew how to pray was the, how do you call the Father prayer?
Our Father.
Yeah, Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, and the Hail Mary, right? So that's all I knew. So I started doing that, and after 3 or 4 days, I realized my life was shittier than before. And I said, this is not working for me. And so I spoke to a friend of mine who converted to Catholicism. And I explained to her what had happened, and she said, the devil knows that you are leaving him, so he's going to come with a vengeance. And she says, but know that God will prevail. So I said, okay, whatever that means. And at night I was really afraid of the dark. And that night I felt the presence of darkness when I was going to bed. And I got up. I could feel the presence coming closer and closer to me. And I got up and I turned on the light. And the next day I heard, you have to go through that to go beyond. And I had no idea what that meant. So the next night, when that presence came, usually I would rather go outside in the middle of the night than staying home and feeling that presence. And I didn't know what it was. And that night, for some reason, I knew I had to let it come. And I let it come, and I let it come. And all of a sudden, I saw the face of the devil in front of me. It was right here, right there. And the fear was so immense that I was draining in my own sweat in bed. And then I could see, and I could telepathically speak to the devil and say, do what you have to do, but God will prevail. So I could see the appearance of the devil, my fear. And even though I could not see God, I knew God was there. I had faith because somebody had put that seed within me. And so even though I could not see God, I had faith. And at that moment, mind you, I was in France, so I have never seen the Wizard of Oz. But I saw the devil going at the end of the bed and melt into its nothingness. I never believed in a devil again in that form. But it has come to me several times in a form of sickness and divorce and losing my possession. And every time I keep the faith that regardless of the appearances, I knew that God would prevail.
Okay, I have a question. How have you developed your faith? I was thinking about this when I saw the question earlier this week. I have often referred to my spiritual travels as a trust walk, because I am very much aware that when I was much younger, and usually this time frame was when I was graduating from college and for the first time stepping out into the world of adults and the world of work in a way that I had never known before. And it was the first time I had felt fear like I had never felt before. I was so totally unprepared. And what I have come to see is that my faith has developed gradually, slowly, 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, sometimes 3 steps backwards. It's really been a process, an accumulative process, whereby over many years, through studying, reading, praying, meditating, sometimes screaming and yelling, I've had to watch things unfold, and that no matter how challenging and difficult they were for me at those various times, with the bigger look and stepping back, I realized I made it. I came through whatever that event was. And so faith and trust have been an accumulative process of just realizing that no matter how my mind, you call it the devil, call it the egoic mind, but that part of myself that all of us have that doubts and gets afraid, I've come to see that with all of that, in the end, I come out the other side and I'm still here, still all right. And I've had some moments that were very testing and trying. I work with my studies in terms of prayer time, reading. Probably for me, it would be fair to say that my #1 mentor has been Joel S. Goldsmith. And his writings and his works have been monumental in me developing that faith and that trust because of how he teaches and what he says. And so I'm still on a trust walk because what I've learned is as I continue, there's always something bigger than me to challenge me. What I take with me, though, today is the wisdom of having gone through various experiences in the past, knowing that I made it, and therefore when I start to find myself getting a bit wobbly and questioning, I can stop and say, yes, do you remember the last time you felt this way? Yeah. And are you standing here? Are you okay? Yeah. You will be again. So it's a process that I think continues as long as I'm still here living. Thank you.
For me, faith came on the, when I was kicking and screaming. I walked in here, I was like so pissed. I was so pissed. And I was like, God, you've got some explaining to do. Why you take my baby, the thing I wanted so much in my life, this ideal love and all that kind of stuff. And so I walked in here in 2010. I had been boxing with myself and going through the ringer, and I was like, I can't do this alone. But I came in here particularly with finding out why, seemingly bad stuff happens to good people. I had this very victim-oriented, mindset, and then I came in here, and I was so angry, and then I learned to trust. I learned to surrender. I learned to give up what I thought, to know in favor that God has my back. I used to go through the trials and tribulations of my emotions, you know, it was my emotional ride, but I would anchor into God is, I am. I am, God is. There's this symbiotic, this relationship that no matter how angry and petulant and I can get by not having my way, that God's way is 1,000 times better. It shows up in my life in people, in thoughts, and books, and inspirations, and Reverend Miriam, when I came in, just sat in this chair and just cried and cried and cried. She's just like, what I loved about this particular faith was that they never told you what to believe. They tell you to know God, come to know God's grace in your own way. And God's grace has been moving in and as me ever since I decided to say, okay, not my way, your way, and I've tried it my way, let me try it another way. And that's what this faith, it started off really tiny, and then it just got prodigiously big. You know, bigger than this room, bigger than this, and I feel the oneness and the connection with all life. And it doesn't scare me. I'm like, yeah, little ego self, get out of the way, let me meld into something that's larger and more real and more honest and more deep. And that's what I learned through faith. And I have more confidence in myself because I have more confidence in God.
For me, I always, as far as back as I can remember, had a relationship with God who did seem to be a separate entity from myself. I felt like no matter what, no matter how alone I seemed, I always had God, which is great. It was a good foundation. At some point in my life, I always prayed or conversed with God. And when I was in college, somebody introduced me to meditation. I meditated daily from then on, and I do believe that saved my life. And through a deepening of meditation, I came to the oneness of creation and all that we teach, that we learn here. And then when I came here, also I've read books, and I read the Bible cover to cover one year. That was a trip. A lot of inspirational books. I think Catherine Ponder has been my biggest mentor. Every time I read one of her books, my life changes. It up levels. And then I ran into this woman who first came here, I believe, Edwene Gaines. She was awesome. She taught prosperity, and when I first came back from that trip that I mentioned earlier, I had $40. That was it. All my stuff was either gone or put in storage. I didn't have that much left. $40, and the car that I had, I loaned to somebody while I was gone, and he didn't put oil in the car, and the distributor screwed up, and I had to fix that. $40, and I started coming here, and I got a job, and da-da-da-da-da. amazing how things moved. I think one biggie that I got from all that was tithing 10%. And even though the minister at the time said, you know, tithe 1%, if that's all you can do right now, in faith, tithe. And so money started coming to me, and it just grew and grew and grew, and I found that I was really successful in manifesting money. So I loved that. That was definite proof of everything. So I just continue to meditate and read books, and I took courses here. Whenever there was a course, I would take it. I think I've taken Foundation like 7 times, because we get these new ministers all the time, and I had to start over. But just keeping on that and noticing the synchronicities of the universe, the gifts, that has been so inspirational to me throughout my life. It just proves that it continues, and I love that. So the next question, I'd like to move that into, combine the next two. Was it hard for you to believe in this teaching, and why do you believe this teaching works? Because the first one could be a yes or no. So let's just combine that, all right? And we'll start with you, Doug.
Answer to the first question, yes. Was it hard for you to believe, and why do you believe this teaching works? Emotionally, yeah, it was hard. Intellectually, I could say, oh, this makes a lot of sense. But believing in something is one thing, having it demonstrated is another. And so, for a long time, it was a challenge, because though I could understand these teachings intellectually, we don't always operate with our intellect. We generally operate from our emotions. And so there was a lot that I had to overcome over the years in terms of my own internal programming about the way life works. And a lot of times it went contrary to the teachings, even though, again, intellectually, I thought the teachings were right on. In terms of why do you believe this teaching works, I would say this, that my understanding of the teachings has gone through a transformation. To simply say, why does this teaching work, I think would be, you have to step back and ask, well, what do we mean by this teaching? And for me, kind of what you were sharing with your own experience, for the teaching to work, we have to get ourselves out of the way. That's when the teaching works. That I had to learn to do a lot of surrendering and a lot of self-examining about my beliefs, and learning how to let go of erroneous ideas and beliefs that I held. And without doing that, the teaching doesn't work, because we'll have something in us that is called unbelief, and we may not even recognize it. And then we may blame the teachings for not working. So really what I had to learn was that for the teachings as they were taught by, let's say, Ernest Holmes to work, there has to be a good amount of self-reflection, self-examination, and honesty about what do I hold to be true, and be willing to let go of false ideas. When I was able to do that, then the teachings would work. And when I couldn't see my unbelief, couldn't see the blocks that I held subconsciously within my mind, then I would say, these teachings don't work. It wasn't the teachings, it was the programming within myself. So, does it work? Yes, it does. But it works, as they say in another program, it works if you work it.
Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to clean out the wrong thoughts, the wrong ideas that we have conditioned ourselves into accepting as reality. And then as we surrender those ideas and those beliefs, then we actually can watch the teaching work. So that's how I would explain it.
Hallelujah.
Well, I know it works because, oh my goodness, when it's like there's fire all around you, okay?
I gotta use it.
There's fire all you, and what you want is on the other side of it. You gotta pass through it. And what makes you pass through it? What gives you the courage? What gives you the strength? It's your faith. It's like you have to say, okay, I'm gonna put aside this idea that says I can't, and I'm gonna pick up I will, I can.
Nice.
Not only will that happen, it's like I'm getting carried. It's like some part of myself gets activated, the higher God part of myself gets activated, and it's dragging the inert, like, whiny baby, the scared little baby of me. It's this giantess comes to forth, and it's because it's God, it's spirit, it's the universe, it's me refusing to think anything but this is for my highest good, and there's some goal at the end of this, and it just I just holding on to that little kernel of thought has made me go through anything. And I feel like I'm girded, I feel like I've got a sword, I feel like I've got what do you call that thing, a shield. I feel like I've got jet propulsion. I feel like, I feel just empowered by the realization that I'm not alone and that I am fueled by something that is out of sight, okay?
Nice.
Thank you. So, was it hard for me to believe? When I was a young girl and I didn't feel good about something, and people would say, well, don't think that way, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I mean, I can't not think that way, that's who I am. At first, I could not believe that I could think something differently because I felt that's being a hypocrite. I said, that's the way I think, and therefore that's the way it is. So in those days when I was told, don't, change the way you think, and you will have a different experience, I could not even get there. Now, I was really young. By the time Science of Mind came to me, I was a bit older, I was in my 20s, and by that time I had completely surrendered to the idea that I did not know anything. And that there must be another way, there must be a better way. And so I put into practice what I was told, and God was really good to me. He allowed me to live like a nun for a few years. So